Could you disappear from our sight? That's what the bride said to me when I attended the wedding of my doctor brother and the daughter of a company president. On my place card, the word middle school graduate was written in big letters. It seems I wasn't just unwelcome by my doctor father and brother, but even by the bride who was about to become part of our family. As I stood there in despair, about to leave, someone approached me and whispered, "Should we take that company down?" Hearing those words, I nodded firmly and made up my mind. My name is Kent Morgan, and I'm 40 years old. I'm single. I have a younger brother, 2 years my junior. His name is Kyle. Unlike me, who was just a middle school graduate, Kyle excelled in both academics and sports. He was truly the ideal of both brains and brawn, and our parents had high hopes for his future. Our family has a long tradition of producing doctors, and Kyle was well on his way to joining that legacy. Our father is a doctor, and our mother is a nurse. But I was sickly from a young age, and because I was preparing for surgery right after middle school, I couldn't enroll in high school. My mother sympathized with me and always stayed by my side, but my father and Kyle were harsh, accusing me of being too dependent on her. They often made unreasonable claims, like blaming my poor health on my weak spirit. I can't count how many times I wished I'd been born healthy. But if I ever voiced those thoughts, I knew my mother would blame herself, so I kept them bottled up. Still, I wasn't the type to let my sickness define me. After finishing the surgery and calming down, I will do what I truly want to do. Someday, I want to live freely without relying on my family. If becoming a doctor was the only way to gain my family's approval, then I'd leave them behind as soon as I could. That's the resolution I made in my heart. After graduating middle school, I successfully underwent surgery, and 6 months later, I began putting my plans into action. I started with a part-time job at a restaurant. I was worried if they would hire someone like me with only a middle school education, but they welcomed me warmly, saying they didn't care about academic background at all. Apparently, my cheerful smile left a good impression, and that's what led to my hiring, Shane later told me. I hadn't even realized it, but hearing that filled me with joy. From then on, I threw myself into learning the job, mastering the art of customer service. Before I knew it, I had turned 20. By that time, I had saved up enough to start living on my own, which drastically reduced my time spent with my family. When I first started working, my father and Kyle had mocked me, saying that someone with only a middle school education wouldn't last at anything. But when I told them I was moving out, they let me go without a word. I had expected them to say something like, "You'll never last living on your own," so their silence surprised me. Now, I live independently and comfortably away from my family. I occasionally stay in touch with my mother or meet her, and through her, I hear about my father and Kyle's lives. Apparently, Kyle graduated medical school and became a doctor. He's now working alongside my father, helping run his hospital. It's impressive how he manages to thrive under the watchful eye of someone as strict as our father. That thought often crosses my mind. Looking back, the gap between Kyle and me had always been clear. This realization hit me once again. But I couldn't let it get to me. I resolved to focus on the work I'd been given and give it my all. With that renewed determination, I poured myself into my job. Before I knew it, I had turned 39. Though many things had happened during that time, I spent every day meaningfully. Then, at the end of the year, I received some surprising news while visiting my parents' home as I did every New Year. Kyle had received a marriage proposal. The bride-to-be was the daughter of a company president, a woman named Anne. I didn't hear this directly from Kyle but rather from my mother, with whom I kept in touch. At that point, they were only engaged, but they planned to register their marriage and hold the wedding after my 40th birthday. I naturally assumed I wouldn't be invited to the wedding. But during that year's New Year visit to my family home, something unexpected happened. You heard about my wedding from Mom, right? I'd like you to come to the ceremony if you can. You're welcome to bring a friend along too. Kyle said this as he handed me a wedding invitation. It had been so long since Kyle had spoken to me directly that I was initially taken aback. But as I held the invitation, the reality slowly set in. I had been invited to Kyle's wedding as a member of the family. Overwhelmed with joy, I stared at the invitation for a while, which made Kyle chuckle. "See you at the wedding. Oh, and I'll introduce you to my fiancée and before then." Kyle said this before leaving in a hurry, likely off to work. I was deeply surprised by how much he seemed to have changed, and I began to think he was making an effort to bridge the gap between us. I decided to let go of the past as well. For now, I just wanted to celebrate the happiness of the couple. I stared at the invitation, feeling as if it were my own joy to cherish. Time flew by, and soon, it was the day of the wedding. Before the ceremony, Kyle introduced me to Anne. She was friendly, polite, and even treated me with respect. I couldn't help but think that meeting her had been the reason for Kyle's change. My father's attitude toward me remained the same, but the fact that my relationship with Kyle had improved was enough for me. My mother seemed happy to see us getting along, and she smiled more often than before. Knowing how much she had endured taking care of me in the past, her smiles filled me with gratitude. After checking in at the reception, my mother and I entered the hall. It was packed with Kyle and Anne's co-workers and friends. Their connections impressively wide. Though I was overwhelmed by the sheer number of people, I was proud of Kyle for how far he had come. Today, I genuinely wanted to celebrate Kyle and Anne's happiness. But then, I saw the name card at my assigned seat, and my body froze. What is this? My mother, standing beside me, covered her mouth with her hand, her face pale. Some nearby guests even snickered when they saw it. On my name card, instead of my name, the word middle school graduate was written. Who on earth would do something like this? It was us, you middle school graduate. A familiar voice came from behind me, making me freeze on the spot. I didn't even need to turn around to know who it was. But the overwhelming sense of despair was crushing. Kyle, why would you do this to Kent? My mother turned around before I could, confronting Kyle with trembling words. I forced myself to turn as well, needing to see it for myself. There stood Kyle, laughing mockingly, alongside Anne, the bride. I didn't want to believe it, but the look on Kyle's face confirmed it. It was the same look he used to give me as a child, whenever he looked down on me. Why? Isn't it obvious, Mom? Because he's just a middle school graduate. I never imagined there'd be a middle school graduate in the family I was about to marry into. And is laughing at me together with Kyle. It's hard to believe what I'm witnessing, but there's no mistaking it. It's real. I swallow the anger rising within me and question them. It's true, I'm a middle school graduate. But so what? Is it really that shameful to be one? Is it such an unforgivable thing? Of course it is. You're already a stain on our elite family, and now you're affecting my wife's family too. Even so, and pushed through her family's objections to be with me. You should be grateful for her generosity. Apparently, Anne's family, being the wealthy family of a company president, also dislikes me. When they learned Anne's future brother-in-law was a middle school graduate, they initially told her to break off the engagement with Kyle. However, the bond between Anne and Kyle was strong, and I didn't cause their relationship to fall apart. Eventually, her family had no choice but to accept their union, which brings us to today. We almost lost the chance to marry because of you. So Anne and I came up with this plan to teach you a lesson. We pretended to be friendly and supportive to set you up, just so we could humiliate you at our wedding. Kyle's words send a ripple of shock through the venue. From the way he tells the story, I sound like the villain. It's as if I was the one who tried to break them up. By the way, it was Anne who came up with the idea to destroy you. She's my wonderful wife who truly understands me. We don't need a middle school graduate like you in our elite family. So, Kent, I'd like to ask you to disappear from our lives for good. Could you kindly leave and never show your face again? Anne's smile is dazzling, almost like a sound effect could accompany it, but her words cut deeply. I'm left speechless. But it's true that I nearly ruined their marriage. Maybe, for their happiness, I should bow out gracefully. Fine. I won't stay. I'll leave the family as you wish. I promise. Really? Oh, I'm so happy. Thank you so much for respecting our wishes, Kent. We'll make sure to be very happy together, won't we, Kyle? Yeah, absolutely. Overjoyed, Anne speaks with a bright smile, and Kyle nods in agreement. The two of them leave me behind and head toward the stage for their wedding ceremony. I can only watch their retreating figures in stunned silence. The people around Kyle, including his co-workers and friends, quickly walked to their seats. No one said a word to me. Even my mother. She's frozen, unable to say a word. She must be at a loss for how to comfort me in this situation. I can't blame her. Overwhelmed by despair, I slump into a nearby chair. I never suspected that the two people who had opened up to me so much would harbor such intense hatred toward me. But if I stayed here any longer, Kyle might eventually come over, angry, and tell me to get out of our sight already. Just as I decided I had to leave before that happened and was about to go, it happened. Shall we destroy that company? I heard someone approach me from behind and call out to me. Startled by the voice, I froze. Kyle had said that I could bring a friend of mine to the ceremony. But I didn't have any friends because of my frail health in school, so I asked my secretary, Jessica, to accompany me. The shock of being betrayed by Kyle and Anne had made me forget for a moment, but I nodded firmly at her words. I had once wished so strongly for their happiness, but now I'm overwhelmed with the desire to prove them wrong. Kent, who is this? My mother, sitting next to me, looks between Jessica and me with confusion and hesitates to ask. Now that I think about it, I'd never introduced Jessica to my mother. Mom, this is your first time meeting her, right? This is Jessica, my secretary. She came with me today as my assistant. Secretary? But I thought you worked at a restaurant. Sorry, Mom. I should have told you sooner. I quit the restaurant job and started my own company. I'm the president now. When I reveal my role as a company president, my mother is so shocked she covers her mouth with her hand. I thought it wasn't necessary to talk about myself, but I might have been wrong. If I had told Kyle and Anne earlier that I'd started my own company and become a president, maybe none of this would have happened. With that thought, I stood up from my seat. I couldn't just sit idly by. Sharpening my gaze, I looked toward Kyle and Anne, who were radiating happiness as though they hadn't just spat cruel insults at me moments ago. Leaving the seat labeled middle school graduate, I made my way toward the two of them. Hey, what's your deal? Didn't we just tell you to get out of our sight? Why are you crawling back here? Kyle's face contorted with irritation as he saw me approaching the stage where the bride and groom stood. Beside him, Anne suddenly burst into laughter as she looked at me. Oh my, Kent. Are you so uneducated that you can't even understand words? At this point, I almost feel sorry for you. Anne's words made Kyle laugh along with her as they mocked me yet again. But I remained calm, looking at the two of them. The ones to be pitted were Kyle and Anne. They didn't realize they were about to face their own downfall. I just have one last thing to say. I realized I haven't introduced the person who came here with me today. I thought you'd like to meet them. Ha! Like I care about whoever came with you. What, another middle school graduate like you? Ignoring their sneers, I introduced Jessica. This is Jessica, my secretary. Since I don't have any friends, I asked her to accompany me today. Your secretary? Don't make me laugh. You probably hired her from some agency. An agency? No, I am Mr. Morgan's personal secretary, and I assist him in his role as president. What? When Kyle mocked me, Jessica immediately and firmly denied it. Both Kyle and Ann are now visibly shocked to hear Jessica refer to me as president. Ha! My brother, a president? Jessica, was it? You don't have to go out of your way to humor him by calling him that. Actually, now's a good time to clear things up. I really am a president. I pulled a business card case from my suit pocket, took out a card, and handed it to them. They snatched it from me and quickly scanned its contents. Sure enough, the card bore my name, the company's name, and my title as president. This is just a piece of paper. You must have had it faked. Want to confirm it? I pointed to the phone number listed on the card. Clearly flustered, Kyle clicked his tongue in irritation but reluctantly pulled out his phone from his tuxedo pocket and called the number. After a while, a staff member answered. When he gave them my name to confirm, they indeed said I was the president. After ending the call, he began trembling uncontrollably. See? It's true, isn't it? No way. It could just be someone with the same name. That's not true. Kyle. Ha! To everyone's surprise, it was Ann who was the first to deny Kyle's words. She had been silent and motionless ever since she checked my business card, and for good reason. She is the daughter of a company president. Seeing the name of my company, she probably couldn't hide her shock. Her face had turned pale. What? What do you mean, Ann? Why are you acting like this? That's because the company on this card, it's one of my father's business partners. Ann's words sent shockwaves through not only Kyle but the entire venue. A business partner? So what? There's no way his company is bigger than your father's, right? No, it's actually the other way around. If my father lost the contract with this company, it could lead to bankruptcy. That's impossible. Reality hit Kyle like a truck, leaving him utterly speechless. And seems to have already admitted defeat, her head hung low in despair. It looks like I've successfully proven that I'm truly a company president. Shh. Kyle glared at me, his fists clenched in frustration, our eyes meeting in a clash of triumph and bitterness. But I decided it wasn't worth engaging with him further. Instead, I shifted my gaze to Ann, who had clearly given up. And it seems your father, Mr. Mason, isn't here yet due to his business trip. I imagine he'll arrive soon to see you in your wedding dress. However, since I'm leaving now, I'd like to leave him a message. A message. Ann's voice trembled, her nervousness almost laughable. Looking at her now, I could see just how foolish she truly was. Please let him know that I intend to terminate our business contract. He can ask you for the details. If you do that, my father's company will go bankrupt. That's cruel. I'm perfectly fine with that. After all, we're no longer family. We're complete strangers. Besides, wasn't it you who told me to disappear from your life? Rest assured, I'm quite good at following through on my promises. I smiled at her, and with that, Ann's face turned even paler as she collapsed to her knees. Ignoring her, I turned my back to Kyle and Ann and signaled to Jessica. Jessica, I'm assigning you a task. Immediately terminate the contract with the bride's family's company. Understood, Mr. Morgan. With a polite bow, Jessica followed me as I descended from the stage. On our way out, I noticed Kyle's friends and colleagues staring at me in disbelief, but I didn't care. Mom, I'll be in touch. I'm heading out now. After returning to my seat, I turned to my mother, who still looked utterly shocked, as if she couldn't believe what had happened. I said my final words to her and headed toward the exit of the venue with Jessica. Just then, as if to block our path, someone appeared in front of us. What do you think you're doing, Dad? Kent? You've become a president? And you pull this kind of stunt? You're nothing but a curse to this family. The person who stood in our way was none other than my father. He, too, seemed shocked by the fact that I was the president. Perhaps due to his extreme agitation, his words were harsher than usual. He pointed toward the stage, wherein was crying uncontrollably, and Kyle was trying to console her. At a glance, it might seem like I had ruined the wedding, but the truth was, they had brought this upon themselves. "So now you're talking to me, huh? After all this time of ignoring me, you show up just to say that? Maybe I really am a curse to you." Reflecting on the time when I was physically weak compared to now, I said those words. But at this moment, I realized once again that something I didn't have back then is now my greatest support. And that's fine. I don't expect anything from this family anymore. There's no need for us to reconcile. I've found something far more important than family. I glanced at Jessica, and when she noticed, a soft smile formed on her lips. I had my company, my employees, and a reliable secretary in Jessica. With them by my side, I had nothing to fear. What happened to Kyle and is their own doing? They're wolves in sheep's clothing. An elite family? How long are you going to cling to that illusion? A person's worth isn't defined by their education or their past. Whether your actions were right or wrong will be revealed in time. You insolent! Ignoring my father's outburst, Jessica and I walked past him and finally left the venue. After walking some distance and leaving the venue's property, I suddenly stopped and sank to the ground. "Are you all right, Mr. Morgan?" Jessica crouched beside me, her voice filled with concern. Since I had told her about my health issues and family history, she likely assumed that the confrontation with my family had taken a toll on me. "Sorry, I'm fine. The tension just hit me all at once. Even someone as composed as you gets nervous, Mr. Morgan? That's surprising." She seemed genuinely taken aback, but I quickly corrected her. "I'm human too. Of course, I get nervous. Even though he's my father, it took a lot of courage to face him and speak for the first time in a long while. My hands are still trembling. But I felt relieved. I had said everything I wanted to say. Jessica, thank you for accompanying me today. I feel like I've finally let go of everything tied to my family. I'm glad I could be of help." Standing up, I expressed my gratitude to Jessica, who smiled warmly at me in return. Later, my mother contacted me and shared what had happened at the venue after I left. Apparently, the wedding had turned into something resembling a funeral. Some guests were puzzled as to why the family didn't know that the middle school graduate older brother was actually a company president. Others found the whole situation ridiculous and left early. And reportedly cried nonstop, playing the victim, but when her father, Mr. Mason, arrived and she explained what had happened, he was absolutely furious. He stormed out of the wedding and began bombarding my phone with calls. Of course, I didn't answer a single one. The contract termination? Jessica handled it all perfectly. She truly is an exceptional secretary. The day after the wedding, poetic justice came swiftly for both Kyle and Anne. Kyle's behavior toward me at the wedding became the talk of his hospital. He was criticized as heartless and cruel. And his reputation within the medical community plummeted. No one wanted to associate with him, and even my father, as the hospital director, faced backlash for failing to guide his son properly. The hospital's reputation crumbled. It was no surprise. Doctors are supposed to stand by their patients. And yet, my father and Kyle, despite knowing I was once physically weak, continued to harass me, using my middle school education as an excuse. This behavior ended up drawing the resentment of other doctors and nurses who attended the wedding. As for Anne, after joining Kyle in mocking me, who was one of her father's business partners, and losing the contract, she was fired from her job. She had been working at her father's company in preparation to take over someday, but that door was firmly shut. Mr. Mason disowned her, severing ties completely. After terminating the contract with my company, Mr. Mason tried to get back on track. However, his efforts were in vain, and the company went bankrupt. With no place to go, and turned to Kyle, suggesting they move in together as husband and wife. but Kyle wasn't having it. This all started because you came up with the plan to humiliate my brother. If not for that, everything would have been fine. He not only rejected his new wife but also placed all the blame on her. Enraged, and fought back. Tracing the problem to its roots, she argued that it was Kyle who had revealed that his brother was a middle school graduate in the first place. Their arguments escalated, and on the very first day of their marriage, they had a massive fight. Soon after, they decided to get a divorce. The hospital's reputation continued to deteriorate, and with patients and staff abandoning it, it eventually closed down. My father and Kyle, who had run the hospital together, found themselves blacklisted in the medical field. Unable to secure employment, they ended up taking on part-time jobs to make ends meet. It seems that and also ended up switching to night work. However, life has been tough for her, as she was a company president's daughter until recently, and she's struggling to hold down a job. I heard all about what happened to Kyle and the others from my mother. After the wedding, my mother divorced my father. We were no longer bound by the toxicity of my father and Kyle and had begun living a freer, happier life. Wanting to repay my mother for all her sacrifices, I gifted her a luxurious apartment. Though she said it was too much for her, I insisted. After all, she had raised me with love and care, even when I was weak and sickly. This was the least I could do. I'm glad you were able to make your mother happy, Mr. Morgan. Jessica, who had listened to my story about my family, said this with a gentle smile. It's all thanks to my dependable secretary, yet she never shows it on the surface. I truly think she is a remarkable person. As a company president, I am far from perfect. But I vow to follow Jessica's example and continue striving to grow as both a professional and a human being. You've got to be kidding me, middle school dropout? How humiliating. My younger brother, whom I raised like a parent, was set to marry the daughter of a wealthy CEO. At the formal introduction, my future in-laws asked about my education. When I answered honestly, they recoiled in shock. The father-in-law glared at me. Let me make something clear. In our family, attending a prestigious university is the norm. We have doctors and business executives among us. That's our lineage. And now, my daughter's brother-in-law is a middle school dropout? This is a disaster. For my brother's sake, I endured the humiliation. But on the day of his wedding, I found my place card defaced with the words "uneducated pauper" scribbled in marker. As I was about to leave, a stunning blonde approached me. Mr. Ingram, should we crush that company? Depends on them. My name is Jason Ingram. I'm 36 years old. My life may be stable now, but the road to get here was anything but easy. Let me start from the beginning. My family consisted of my father, mother, and my younger brother, Sebastian, who was 7 years younger than me. From as far back as I can remember, my parents' marriage was a disaster. My father's furious yelling echoed through our home daily, and I lost count of how many nights I trembled in fear as I tried to sleep. When I had just started elementary school, my brother Sebastian was born. I still remember my mother telling me, "Take care of him as his big brother, okay?" I took those words to heart and looked after Sebastian the best I could. I fed him, took him to the park. He would toddle after me, calling Jason, Jason, and even as a child myself, I adored him. But when I was in 5th grade and Sebastian was 3, my parents finally divorced. Our father left, and our new life as a family of 3, my mother, Sebastian, and me, began. My mother was never in great health. But to support us, she started working multiple jobs, day and night. When she wasn't home, it was my job to take care of Sebastian. Despite everything, she was kind and poured all her love into us. I wanted to support her, so I never complained and helped out around the house even after I became a teenager. For a while, the 3 of us managed to get by. By the time I was in my final year of middle school, I had already decided I wouldn't go to high school, I'd start working instead. But when I told my mother, she was completely against it. I only wanted to help her, but she cried and begged me to go to high school. Feeling guilty, I agreed. From then on, I studied relentlessly. Eventually, I earned a full scholarship to the top high school in the region, K-High. Jason, that's amazing. K-High is for the smartest kids, right? You're my hero. The day I got accepted, both Sebastian and my mother were overjoyed. Mom, thank you for letting me go to high school. I promise I'll work hard, get a good job, and make life easier for you. She told me not to worry about her, but I had already made up my mind. High school was a great experience. I consistently ranked at the top of my class, made friends, and was fortunate to have supportive teachers. I became especially close to a friend named Daniel. We were practically best friends. I wished those happy days could last forever, but one day, everything came crashing down. My mother collapsed at work. By the time I arrived at the hospital, it was too late. Years of overwork had taken their toll, and she passed away suddenly from an illness. A nurse told me, until the very end, she kept calling your names, Jason, Sebastian. I broke down in tears. Sebastian clung to her lifeless body, wailing in agony. With no other relatives, we held a small, simple funeral. Afterward, a government official came and asked what we planned to do. Since we had no family to take us in, we could go to a state facility if we wished. But I couldn't bring myself to leave the apartment filled with memories of our mother. I remembered what she once told me when Sebastian was born: take care of him. I steeled my resolve and answered firmly, I'll drop out of high school and work. I'll raise Sebastian myself. Sebastian, who was in 5th grade at the time, was visibly shaken. Jason, you can't. You love school, don't you? You're the top student. You shouldn't do this. Sebastian, don't worry. From now on, I'll make sure you're happy. And just like that, I made the decision to quit high school. My teachers and friends were shocked and tried to stop me. But I was determined. I ignored their pleas and submitted my notice of withdrawal. Daniel, my best friend, insisted on helping me find a job. His family owned a construction company, and he promised to ask his father to hire me. With no other job prospects, I bowed my head and asked him to make it happen. And so, I joined S Construction, a company specializing in residential and commercial buildings, with only a middle school education. Daniel's father, Mr. Keller, knew my circumstances and sympathized with me. If you ever need help, don't hesitate to ask, he told me. I started at the bottom, assisting carpenters, carrying materials, and doing whatever tasks needed to be done. Every day, I worked up a sweat, earning a living while also taking care of Sebastian. Luckily, Sebastian was a bright and independent kid. He never gave me any trouble. Maybe he was doing his best not to burden me. He even helped with cooking, and every night, we ate dinner together. One of my greatest joys was listening to him talk about his day at school. But when he entered middle school, I noticed something. Sebastian, you never talk about club activities. Aren't they mandatory in middle school? You used to love soccer in elementary school, aren't you joining the soccer team? Sebastian looked down uncomfortably. Well, joining a club costs money for gear and stuff. And if I stay late for practice, I won't be able to help around the house. So I told my teacher I'd skip club activities. I was stunned and made him sit down. Sebastian, don't hold yourself back like that. You should play soccer. But, Jason, don't worry about the money. I'll handle the housework. I don't want you to miss out on being a kid. You should do what you want to do. Tears welled up in Sebastian's eyes. That's not fair. Why do I get to do what I want when you had to give up everything for me? What are you talking about? I enjoy my job. I'm doing just fine. So go for it, Sebastian, play soccer. After a long pause, he finally nodded. I regretted making him feel like he had to worry about me. From then on, I dedicated myself even more to both my work and my responsibilities at home. Sebastian thrived in the soccer club, and watching his matches on weekends became one of my greatest joys. Not only that, but he excelled in academics as well. He was the perfect student. I was incredibly proud of him. However, when he reached his final year of middle school, we had a heated argument. "Sebastian, what the hell is this on your career form? Employment?" "Mr. Thompson, your homeroom teacher, said during the parent-teacher conference that you'd have no trouble getting into K-High." "Jason, I'm going to start working after middle school. I can't keep burdening you any longer." Looking at his determined face, I saw my younger self reflected in him. Was this how Mom felt when I told her I wasn't going to high school? A painful tightness gripped my chest. "Sebastian, look at this." I took out 2 bank books. "This one holds the money Mom left for us. And this one is what I've saved over the past 5 years since I started working. It's more than enough for your high school tuition." Sebastian's eyes widened as he looked at the savings. "I was able to save this much thanks to you living frugally with me. I've made sure you have everything you need to go to K-High. So don't worry about a thing and just go." His voice trembled as he spoke. "The closer I get to the age you were back then, the more I realize how hard you must have worked to get into K-High, and how painful it must have been to give it all up. You've done everything for me, and I've never given anything back. So at the very least, I wanted to be independent and start working." I placed my hands firmly on his shoulders. "Sebastian, you've already given me so much. Just seeing you grow up and enjoy your youth gives me strength. You choosing to live your life to the fullest is what saves me. Please, understand that. Let me have the peace of knowing you're taken care of." Tears started streaming down his face. "Is it really okay if I go to high school?" "Of course it is. You're going to enjoy it for both of us. Jason, I promise. I'll study hard and become someone you can be proud of. I'll do my best, so I won't let you down." And just like that, Sebastian agreed to go to high school. Not only did he get into K-High, but he also earned a full scholarship, just like I had. Sebastian said I would get a part-time job, but I made him keep playing soccer. Watching him balance his studies, sports, and friendships like a regular high school student was the best motivation I could ever ask for. Meanwhile, at work, I earned various qualifications and gradually took on more responsibilities. But no matter how much my role changed, I never forgot my roots. I remained diligent and dedicated to my craft. I kept in touch with Daniel, and after we became adults, we'd occasionally grab drinks together. Little by little, I, too, was growing into my own. By the time Sebastian reached his final year of high school, I had one last question for him. "Sebastian, you already know what you should do next, don't you?" When I said that, Sebastian gave a deep nod. "Jason, I want to go to university. Would that be okay?" After all his resistance before, hearing him say that out of his own will made me happier than I could express. "Of course. Go learn everything only university can teach you. Thank you so much. I'll apply for scholarships and work part-time, so I won't be a burden to you. Don't worry about that. Just focus on studying. I'll always have your back, so rely on me whenever you need to." He nodded, his face breaking into the most genuine smile. Sebastian went on to earn a scholarship at a prestigious national university. He even received a grant-based scholarship, meaning he didn't have to worry about tuition. I was so proud of him that I couldn't help but brag to Daniel about it. I attended his university entrance ceremony and even stood as his guardian at his coming-of-age ceremony. Although he worked part-time to support himself, once he started job hunting, that became difficult. That was when I stepped in. Sebastian thanked me over and over again, but honestly, I was just happy to help. And in the end, he secured a job at a top-tier company. When he received the offer, he came straight to me and bowed deeply. "Jason, I made it this far because of you. Ever since the day we lost Mom, you've protected me and raised me. You're my only family, and I couldn't ask for a better brother. I'll never forget everything you've done for me. Thank you, truly." At that moment, I felt like all the years of hardship had finally paid off. "Sebastian, you're my greatest pride. You've become an incredible man, someone I can show off to anyone. Now, focus on your career and do your best out there." Sebastian nodded, repeating thank you over and over again. He graduated from university and finally became independent. At that point, we decided to move out of the apartment we had lived in for so long and each start living on our own. Even so, we continued to meet regularly and have meals together. When Sebastian received his first paycheck at T Corp, he took me to a fancy restaurant. "I know this isn't enough to repay everything you've done for me, but treating you to a nice meal like this has always been my dream." His words touched me deeply, and I truly enjoyed that luxurious meal. Meanwhile, at work, I earned a promotion and continued to dedicate myself to my job. Daniel's father, my employer, recognized my efforts, and I was grateful for that. I was determined to give my all to this company as a way of repaying the kindness I had received. Then, one day, I met someone. A foreign woman joined our company. "Nice to meet you, I'm Jessica. I look forward to working with you all." She introduced herself in flawless Japanese, and I found myself captivated. Her golden blonde hair, her fair skin. She had strikingly beautiful features. She was assigned to my department. According to Jessica, she had moved to Japan with her parents during high school, and back then, our construction company had built their house. She had been so impressed with the craftsmanship that she studied business management in university and applied to work at our company. "Jason, just call me Jessica." "Oh, sure." I had spent my life surrounded by men in the workplace and had little experience interacting with women. But Jessica was naturally outgoing and quickly grew comfortable around me. As we worked together, I was constantly amazed by her capabilities. I came to deeply respect her. After about 2 years of working together, she invited me out for a meal. Since it was our first time dining together alone, I was nervous. But then she hit me with something unexpected. "I'll be direct. Jason, how do you feel about me?" Gone was her usual confident demeanor, her face was slightly flushed. What do you mean?" "You're incredibly skilled at your job, and I really respect you." "Not like that. I mean, do you see me as a woman?" The thought of seeing Jessica as a romantic interest had never even crossed my mind. She was beautiful, highly educated, and talented at her job. Someone like her was completely out of my league. I had probably convinced myself of that from the start. When I told her this honestly, she let out a sigh. "Let me be clear, I like you, Jason." True to her direct nature, she said it outright, leaving me completely shaken. "From now on, I want you to see me that way. If it doesn't work out, I'll let it go." I barely managed to nod, and that night, we parted ways. But after giving it some thought, I realized just how much Jessica had come to mean to me. A few days later, I finally told her, "Jessica, I like you too. If you don't mind being with someone like me, would you go out with me seriously?" At that moment, her face lit up with a radiant smile, like a sunflower blooming in the sun. She nodded happily. And so, Jessica and I began dating. I was inexperienced in relationships and had no idea how to take the lead, so I swallowed my pride and consulted Daniel and Sebastian for advice. Sebastian was thrilled that I had found someone special and even helped me plan date spots. Before I knew it, I was 35, and Sebastian was 29. One day, I got a call from Sebastian. "Sebastian? What's up? You inviting me out for dinner?" Then, Sebastian answered in a slightly embarrassed voice. I have someone I want you to meet, Jason. Wait, does that mean? Yeah, I'm thinking about getting married. I couldn't help but let out a joyful shout. I had heard that Sebastian was dating a colleague, but it seemed things had finally progressed to marriage. Of course, I'd love to meet her. Great. Also, if possible, could you bring Jessica along? You're serious about her, too, right? That was true, Sebastian and Jessica hadn't met yet. This seemed like a good opportunity, so I decided to bring Jessica along for the introduction. On the day of the meeting, Sebastian arrived with a petite, kind-looking woman. Nice to meet you. I'm Monica Sanders. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. I introduced myself to Monica, Sebastian's fiancée, and also introduced Jessica. Then, the four of us sat down for a meal. During dinner, Monica spoke up. Sebastian told me about how much you struggled to raise him after your mother passed away. Oh, it's really not that big of a deal. No, not everyone could do what you did. I respect you for it. And I can tell that more than anything, you want Sebastian to be happy. That's why. I want to do my best to make him happy, too. So, will you give us your blessing for our marriage? I was moved by Monica's sincere words. Of course. Monica, please be happy with Sebastian. Thank you, Jason. Sebastian and Monica both bowed deeply to me. On the way home, Jessica spoke up. Sebastian is just like you, he's a wonderful person. And Monica is a great match for him. Yeah, I'm really happy for them. I hope they have a beautiful life together. I nodded with a smile at Jessica's words. A few weeks later, I was set to meet Monica's family. The meeting was held at a restaurant attached to the venue where Sebastian and Monica would have their wedding. Dressed in a suit, I headed there. Nice to meet you, I'm Scott Sanders, Monica's father. And this is my wife, Alicia. Monica's father was a stocky man with an air of authority. Her mother, on the other hand, wore lots of jewelry and had a rather flashy presence. Monica had told me beforehand that her father ran a company dealing with imported materials. In other words, Monica was the daughter of a company president. Sebastian introduced me, and I bowed politely. I hear Sebastian graduated from a prestigious university and works at the same top-tier company as Monica T Corporation. Not only that, but he's considered their brightest rising star. Truly an ideal match for our daughter. When Scott said that, Alicia smiled as well. Yes, absolutely. We fully support this marriage. I also expressed my support for the marriage, and the conversation remained warm and pleasant. Seeing how welcoming Monica's parents were to Sebastian reassured me. Just then, Sebastian and Monica were called away by the staff to discuss wedding preparations. They said they'd be gone for about 10 minutes. That left just me and Monica's parents at the table. So, may I ask, which university did you graduate from? Scott suddenly leaned forward and asked. I answered honestly. I didn't go to college. What? At that moment, I began to explain. When I was in high school, my mother passed away. Since then, I had been working at a construction company to raise Sebastian. As I spoke, the expressions on Monica's parents' faces gradually changed. What? So you're telling me your highest level of education is middle school? Yes, that's correct. This is unbelievable. Scott placed a hand on his forehead and looked up at the ceiling. Is something wrong? Of course something is wrong. I can't believe Sebastian's brother is a middle school dropout. Scott spoke with a furious expression. This is outrageous. I assumed, naturally, that Sebastian's brother had also graduated from a prestigious university. But to find out that you're just a middle school graduate? It's absolutely humiliating. Wait, humiliating? Scott glared at me. That's right. Let me make something clear: we come from a family where attending a top university is the norm. Many of our relatives are doctors or business executives. That's our lineage. And now, Monica's future brother-in-law turns out to be a middle school dropout? This is a disgrace. As I sat there, stunned, Alicia frowned. Honey, maybe we should reconsider this marriage from the beginning. But the engagement has already been announced to the relatives, and there's nothing wrong with Sebastian himself. Scott furrowed his brow. Then, Alicia spoke firmly. I know. Let's have Sebastian cut ties with him. You should distance yourself from him and stay away from Monica. If you do that, we'll allow the marriage. What? Sebastian is my only family. Then, Scott spoke coldly. If you truly consider yourself family, then you should think about their happiness. I simply cannot accept being related to someone with such a low level of education. Understand this: if you don't step back, we will not approve this marriage. Their words were nothing short of an insult, and I felt a surge of anger rising inside me. But then, I remembered Sebastian and Monica's happy faces. I couldn't be the one to ruin their marriage. Please, approve their marriage. Suppressing my frustration, I bowed my head. Good. Know your place and use what little intelligence you have to think about what's best for your brother. Scott glared at me while Alicia shot me a contemptuous look. Just then, Sebastian and Monica returned. Immediately, Scott and Alicia's expressions shifted into bright smiles as they welcomed them back. Under the table, I clenched my fists tightly. I never told Sebastian about the way they treated me. If he found out, he would surely be furious. And if that happened, it could cause problems between him and Monica. Jason, I really hope you and Jessica can come to the wedding. Sebastian said this with a big smile. How could I possibly tell him the truth? 3 months later, the day of Sebastian and Monica's wedding arrived. Jessica and I headed to the venue together. She was the only person I had told about what happened with the Sanders. Jason, are you really sure about attending? What if they say something awful again? Today is Sebastian's big day. Besides, it's their daughter's wedding. I doubt they'd cause a scene. Despite my anxiety, I tried to reassure her. The ceremony began. Sebastian walked into the chapel with confidence, looking sharp in his tuxedo. Seeing him like that brought tears to my eyes. After he reached the altar, it was Monica's turn to enter. With his chest puffed out, Scott escorted her down the aisle, and Monica walked gracefully beside him. The solemn ceremony began. I watched with deep emotion as they exchanged vows and rings. Jessica sat beside me, clapping along with the rest of the guests. And just like that, the beautiful ceremony came to an end. Next, we moved from the chapel to the reception hall. During the ceremony, both Scott and Alicia had deliberately avoided making eye contact with me. At one point, a relative, likely from Monica's side, asked Scott something while glancing in my direction. Scott answered with a bitter expression, and the relative looked at me in shock. I could already guess what they were talking about: my education. I forced myself to ignore their stares. Upon entering the reception hall, I was surprised to find that Jessica and I had been given a beautifully set table. But when I checked the place card on my seat, I froze. Scrawled across it in marker were the words, "Uneducated pauper." What the hell? Jessica noticed my expression, peeked at the place card, and immediately covered her mouth in shock. There was only one group of people who could have done this. I glanced over at the table where Monica's parents were seated. They were pointing at me and laughing uproariously. Scott and Alicia clutched their stomachs as if they had just heard the funniest joke in the world. The relatives at their table, also laughing, stole glances in my direction. I took a deep breath and forced myself to sit down. At that moment, the announcement played. Sebastian and Monica were about to make their entrance. I couldn't afford to make a scene here. For Sebastian and Monica's sake, I had to endure it. The reception began, but I couldn't eat a bite. All I could do was stare at the words on my place card, uneducated pauper. Jessica, too, sat beside me in silence, her expression unreadable. She hadn't touched her food either. Then came the candle service, where Sebastian and Monica made their way around the room, visiting each table. As they approached, Scott and Alicia smirked and walked over to our table first. Well, dear Jason. Are you enjoying the wedding? I remained silent, looking up at him. This is the kind of event where the groom's family should come over and pour drinks for the bride's parents, you know. But here you are, just sitting in silence. No sense of etiquette whatsoever. I suppose that's to be expected from someone with only a middle school education. How disgraceful. Alicia, dressed in an elaborate kimono, sneered at me. At that moment, I finally spoke. Did you do this? Scott grinned, revealing his yellowed teeth. Oh, that? Just a little gift. It made it easy for you to find your seat, didn't it? Alicia let out a coarse laugh. You think you can get away with something this insulting? Jessica, unable to hold back any longer, spoke up. Scott immediately turned his glare to her. Who do you think you are, foreign girl? You have no place in this conversation. What are you, some hostess from a nightclub or something? As expected from a middle school dropout, so vulgar. At that moment, I lost it. They had insulted Jessica. That, I could not forgive. Just as I was about to speak, Sebastian and Monica arrived at our table. Jason, Jessica, thank you so much for coming to our wedding. Ha? What's going on? Sebastian immediately sensed the tense atmosphere and looked at us in confusion. Jessica, her expression ice cold, pointed to my place card. Sebastian and Monica glanced at it and instantly went pale. What the hell is this? Who did this? It's a gift from your father-in-law and mother-in-law. When I responded calmly, Sebastian looked at Scott and Alicia with a face that said he couldn't believe it. Monica covered her mouth with both hands, frozen in shock. Jessica was the first to break the silence. Sebastian, Monica. You probably didn't know, but Jason has been subjected to their insults ever since the engagement meeting. They called him uneducated, told him to stay away from your family. And just now, they said horrible things again. They even insulted me, calling me a vulgar woman. Her voice was firm and unwavering. Sebastian's eyes widened in shock. But before he could respond, Scott spoke. He had the nerve to show up at the wedding, that's why. Sebastian blinked. What? Alicia continued. That's right. We told him to stay away, and yet he came anyway. It's his own fault. Monica. Isn't it embarrassing to have a middle school dropout in our family? From now on, we'll have nothing to do with him. Sebastian. You should cut ties as well. A heavy silence fell over the table. Sebastian trembled, about to speak, but before he could, Monica's voice rang out. This is disgusting. How could you do something so horrible? Monica. I never got along with you two, but this is beyond disgraceful. I'm ashamed of you both. Jason, Sebastian, I'm so sorry. Her shoulders shook, and her voice was thick with tears. Alicia panicked and tried to calm her down. Monica, don't lower your head to a man like him. That's so unbecoming. The only ones who are unbecoming are you two. I'm done. I'm cutting ties with you today. I've made up my mind. Scott's face twisted with rage, and he turned his glare to me. Sebastian. How dare you make my daughter say such things? This is all your fault. You're ruining everything. Get out of here, you worthless nobody. Alicia chimed in. That's right. You're a disgrace. Everything would have been perfect if you weren't here. I turned to Sebastian. Sebastian, congratulations. But I think it's time for me to leave. Jason. As I stood up, Scott sneered. You should have done that from the start, you brainless dropout. Take that woman and get out of here. At that moment, Jessica's voice rang through the hall. Mr. Ingram, should we shut their company down? I let out a sigh and answered. That depends on how they behave. A stunned silence spread through the room. Then, Scott burst into laughter. CEO? Shut us down? What kind of nonsense is this? Did I hear that right? A middle school dropout talking big? What a joke. I pulled a business card from my pocket and held it out. I suppose I should have introduced myself properly. Printed on the card were the words, S Corporation Construction, CEO, Jason Ingram. Scott's smug expression faltered as he read the card aloud. S Corporation Construction. Wait a minute. That's the same name as our major supplier. Not just the same name. That company is ours. And as of last month, Jason became the CEO. What? That's right. As of last month, I had been appointed CEO of one of the largest construction companies in the region. Many people hear construction company and assume it's a small business, but S Corporation was an industry leader. We handled major projects, tourist buildings, luxury apartments, commercial skyscrapers. Originally, the company was run by my best friend Daniel's father. However, Daniel, the only son, had a dream of becoming a doctor, and he made it come true. Then, he refused to take over the family business. With no heir, the previous president, Mr. Keller, approached me. I had studied independently and earned my architect's license, working in management for years. You're the only one I trust to take over, Mr. Keller had told me. I felt humbled, but since I had experience working from the ground up and had earned strong trust from those around me, the board of directors also insisted, saying, by all means. With my best friend Daniel's encouragement, I decided to accept the offer. Jessica, in addition to being my fiancée, worked as my executive secretary and business advisor. With my promotion, she had naturally become my right-hand woman. It was only recently that I discovered that Scott's company was one of our major material suppliers. No. No way. This can't be happening. Scott, now pale, frantically pulled out his phone and began searching. He opened the S Corporation website, only to be greeted by an announcement, new CEO appointment, along with my photo. What the? You mean to tell me that you're actually my husband's business partner? Alicia was on the verge of panic. Scott, now sweating profusely, stammered. If only you had told us sooner. You should have said something right away. So, you're saying that if you had known he was the CEO, you wouldn't have called him a middle school dropout or a pauper? Jessica's voice was ice cold as she interjected. Yes, exactly. I mean, what a wonderful surprise. Becoming in-laws with the CEO of S Corporation. How about a drink to celebrate? Ignoring Scott, who spoke with a forced smile, I turned to Jessica and started talking to her. Jessica, what would happen if we cut ties with his company? There would be no impact, Mr. Ingram. We have alternative suppliers lined up. When Jessica, in work mode, spoke calmly, Scott flew into a rage. You can't be serious. Are you actually saying you're going to terminate our contract? By now, the entire reception hall had gone silent. All eyes were on us. I told you, it depends on your actions. If you sincerely apologize here and now, I might reconsider. What do you say? Want to bow your head to this middle school dropout? Scott's face turned an alarming shade of red. But he couldn't bring himself to bow, not in front of his relatives and the wedding guests. No, that's ridiculous. Tell you what, how about we lower our supply prices for you? That way, we can continue our partnership. Jessica let out a loud sigh. It's over. Yeah. Talk to the sales department and make arrangements to terminate the contract. Alicia shrieked. Wait. That's absurd. You can't be serious. Do you even know what you're doing? But before he could reach me, Sebastian and Monica stepped between us. Enough. You two are the ones who need to leave. I don't care if you're Monica's parents, I will never forgive you for insulting my brother. Monica quickly signaled to the staff, and within moments, security arrived to escort Scott and Alicia out. I'm so sorry, Jason, Jessica. Truly, I had no idea. Monica lowers her head, her eyes filled with tears. It's not your fault, Monica. Now, let's get back to your wedding. Everyone's waiting for you too. And with that, the reception carried on without issue. Afterward, a few days later, Monica made a firm declaration. I'm cutting ties with my parents and the rest of the family. I can't be associated with people like that. As long as I have Sebastian, that's all I need. As Monica speaks, I look at Sebastian. Sebastian, take care of Monica. Make sure she's happy. He nodded resolutely. As promised, I followed through with cutting ties with Scott's company. The result? His company took a devastating financial hit. They struggled to recover but were unable to secure new contracts. Within a year, they were forced to declare bankruptcy. It turned out that Scott and Alicia had been living extravagantly, draining company funds for their personal luxuries. They had almost no savings. When the company collapsed, they were left with massive debts. They were forced to sell their home and all their assets, leaving them penniless. I later heard that they now lived in a rundown apartment, working menial jobs just to survive and pay off their debts. But no matter how desperate their situation became, I felt not even an ounce of sympathy. As the CEO of S Corporation Construction, I continue to work diligently every day. Recently, I bought a ring for Jessica. One of the reasons was Sebastian's advice: you'd better marry Jessica soon, or she'll get away. Finally, I was ready to be with Jessica. I want to spend my life with her. I wondered how she would react when I gave her the ring. Imagining her expression, I took a deep breath and pushed open the doors of the restaurant where she was waiting. If you can answer it correctly, I'll grant you one request. The CEO, Ms. Nelson, whom I met during the final job interview, turned out to be my former classmate. Back in school, she had inexplicably disliked me. And now, she wasn't just planning to reject my application, she handed me an unreasonable entry test clearly meant to embarrass me. Her intentions were written all over her expression. She wanted to see me struggle. Only people who are better than me will be hired. But the moment I saw the test, I breezed through it, filling in the answers quickly. This is way too easy. I'm done already, I said, smiling at her stunned face. My name is Keith, and I'm 27 years old. I live in Sapporo, Hokkaido. I was born and raised here but moved away after graduating middle school for a personal reason and hadn't been back since. I moved to a small town far from Sapporo, where my mother's family lived. Hokkaido is vast, and the distance to any major city can feel daunting, no matter where you are. However, I managed to make friends and enjoy a fulfilling life in my new town. Now, 10 years later, I've returned to this city. The reason? Job hunting. But not as a fresh graduate. In fact, I've already worked for a company in Tokyo before. There, I was entrusted with various tasks even as a newcomer and led a fulfilling work life at first. But that all changed after my first year. One day, I suddenly received a call from my uncle back home. Keith, something terrible happened. Uncle Tom? It's been a while. What's wrong? Your mom. She slipped while shoveling snow. What? My mom? Is she okay? In snowy Hokkaido, accidents caused by snow shoveling are unfortunately common. I listened as my uncle explained the situation in detail, fearing the worst. Thankfully, it wasn't from roof shoveling, but while clearing snow in front of the house, she slipped. However, she hadn't managed to break her fall properly and ended up fracturing her leg. She also hit her head, so she's in the hospital for observation. Can you come back to check on her? Your dad's busy. And you know how he tends to overexert himself. I'll talk to my boss and see what I can do. Got it. I hung up, but honestly, I felt like I'd been handed a lifeline. You see, the company I worked for was a big name, but the working environment was terrible. During my first year, my boss had been supportive and approachable, but from my second year, their attitude shifted drastically. Overtime became routine, and weekend shifts were treated as a given. I was constantly sleep deprived, unable to think straight. Stress kept piling up, and both my physical and mental health were nearing their limits. So when my uncle called, I seized the chance to take leave and return to Hokkaido to check on my mom. Seeing her for the first time in ages, I was shocked at how frail she looked. But my mom also seemed to notice the drastic change in me compared to when I had first moved to Tokyo. When I told my mom I planned to quit my job and move back to Hokkaido, she nodded with a smile. I can see it in your face, Keith. You're always welcome to come back. Those words gave me the strength I needed to move forward. I used up the last of my vacation days and left my job within 2 weeks. While helping my mom recover from her leg injury, I also took the time to rest my own body and mind. Once I'd settled back into life in Hokkaido, I began my job search. I was looking for jobs in Hokkaido, not Tokyo, because I was worried that something might happen to my mother again. Another reason was that returning to that environment was something I couldn't handle in my current state. So I focused my job hunt in my hometown, Hokkaido. And after a 3-hour train ride, I returned to the city where I was born and raised for the first time in 10 years. Compared to Tokyo, it felt quieter, but it was far more developed and convenient than when I left. A large department store now stood in front of the station, and the nearby park had been replaced by an apartment complex. The arcade where I used to hang out had been turned into a family restaurant. As I made my way to the company for the interview, I couldn't help but stop at a familiar spot. It was my old middle school. Since it was a Saturday, only students participating in club activities were visible on the school grounds. This brings back memories. Not much has changed here. I stopped in my tracks without thinking and found myself lost in memories of the past. To be honest, middle school wasn't a happy time for me. Moving to my mom's hometown after graduating felt like a relief. The reason? There was a girl in my class who used to harass me. Her name was Melissa. She was stunningly beautiful, with excellent grades to match. Not only was she the most attractive girl in the class, but she also won first place in the school's beauty contest, making her incredibly popular. For some reason, though, I became her target. Back then, I was still small for my age, shorter than most of the girls in class, and I guess that made me an easy mark. But beyond that, I had no idea why she fixated on me. One day, after school, I was borrowing a book in the library. Are you studying properly? If your family is poor, you'd better try harder, she said, peeking over my shoulder and mocking me. Moreover, she always made sure to target me when I was alone. That unpleasant behavior continued even after the class was reorganized, and no matter how much I thought about it, I couldn't understand why. As I had no memory of doing anything to make her dislike me. So, there was a time when I decided to confront her and directly ask why she was doing such things. She frowned, stuck her tongue out, and said, "Because I don't like you," before walking away. Even with that rude gesture, her beauty was captivating. It was the kind of charm that made idol-like antics seem adorable, not annoying. Honestly, I might have even been a little mesmerized by her in that moment. Man, what an unpleasant memory. I need to focus on the interview. After graduation, I moved away and lost touch with her. She's probably forgotten all about me by now. Dwelling on the past won't help me move forward. I gave my cheek a light slap, shaking off the lingering thoughts, and made my way toward the company. Anyway, I made it to the final interview. I've got to give it my best. The company I was interviewing with was a well-known major firm in the city. It was rooted in the local community, making it an ideal choice for someone like me seeking a fresh start. In the waiting room, there were several other applicants in suits, likely also here for a mid-career opportunity. Everyone looked tense as they sat, waiting to be called. I adjusted my documents and straightened my tie, taking a deep breath while I waited for my name to be called. The final interview was said to be a one-on-one with the company's CEO, Ms. Nelson. Even though it's a regional area, she is the CEO who built a major corporation, so she must have a very sharp eye for talent. Thinking about that, I could feel sweat forming on my palms. After what felt like an eternity, a young female staff member opened the door and called out, "Keith." Finally, it was my turn. Nervously, I opened the door to the meeting room, and in the middle of the room sat a young woman with jet black hair. But the moment I saw her, I was so confused that I wondered if I had entered the wrong room. Without paying any attention to my reaction, she looked at me and said, "Please take a seat and wait," without even cracking a smile. "This is Ms. Nelson, the CEO of the company I hope to work for." I'd only seen her name before, but seeing her in person was a completely different experience. As I sat down, she raised her eyes from the documents she was reviewing, still expressionless. Looking at her up close, I could feel an uncomfortable sweat starting to form. "Let's start with your introduction." "Yes, my name is Keith. I'm the CEO of this company." "My name is Melissa Nelson." Yes, the company I had applied to was run by none other than Melissa, my former classmate. Of course, I had known that all along. The moment I entered the room, I was stunned. I knew she had always been attractive, but I hadn't expected her to have grown even more beautiful, leaving me momentarily frozen. Well, she probably didn't even remember me. Melissa was already famous for her beauty back in middle school. But I heard through the grapevine that she went on to attend the University of Tokyo after graduating high school. Apparently, she had even been crowned Miss Tokyo University and was featured in magazines as a stunning, accomplished student. But seeing her in person, I couldn't believe how much more stunning she had become. It made my heart race. She carried herself with such grace and authority that it was almost overwhelming. After a few seconds of silence, it was Melissa who broke the ice. "It's been a while. How have you been, Keith?" "Yes, it really has. You don't have to be so formal. We're classmates, remember?" Her expression had changed from earlier, and now she was smiling softly, a beautiful smile that I couldn't help but admire. "No, this isn't the time to be thinking about that. It's the job interview." I straightened my posture, refocused, and looked at her with renewed determination. "Don't mind me, you're still the CEO." "Right, that's true." She looked at me as if she were evaluating my worth. Her gaze was so intimidating that I decided to stick with formal language for the rest of the conversation. If she was trying to catch me off guard, she might use it against me to claim I lacked professionalism. "Boring," she muttered under her breath, but I didn't miss it. She definitely had something up her sleeve. That realization only made me more wary. Noticing my tension, she returned to her serious demeanor and continued the interview. "All right, let's go over some things. I've reviewed your resume." "Yes. It says here you went to Harvard. Is that true?" "Honestly, it sounds like a big lie." "Are you really okay coming here with something like that? Even a grade schooler wouldn't write such an obvious falsehood." "A lie?" "Yes, a lie. No matter how much you want the job, lying is unacceptable." "No, it's true." I tried to respond with a polite smile, thinking she might be joking, but she didn't seem amused. She alternated between looking at me and my resume, clearly not convinced. "Interesting. But you didn't attend high school, right? That's correct. I didn't go to high school. So, you skipped high school and went straight to Harvard? Sounds a bit too perfect, don't you think? But it's true. After finishing middle school, I moved, and I didn't attend high school in Japan afterward. When I hesitantly said that, she eagerly latched onto the topic. Why did you move after graduating middle school? Well, it was a reason I didn't even want to remember. As unpleasant memories came rushing back, I found myself struggling for words. There were a few reasons why our family left the city and moved to my mother's hometown. The main reason was my parents' diner. It wasn't a trendy city restaurant but rather a small family-owned diner serving home-style meals. Though it had a reputation for delicious food and a few loyal customers, even I could tell that the old, small building was falling apart. The choice came down to either renovating or demolishing it entirely. In the end, we decided to close and move out. The other reason was my health. I got sick. It's completely cured now, but at the time, I was dealing with stress-related health issues. The doctor advised us to move away from the source of the stress and live somewhere else. Oh, really? Yes. On top of that, my parents were running the diner. But it was so old that the discussion even went as far as whether to rebuild or tear it down. That little diner was a bit dated, wasn't it? Yes, and with my situation as well, our family decided to move to my mother's hometown. As I averted my gaze while explaining, she fell silent for a moment. The source of my stress, it was Melissa's relentless bullying. Eventually, my body started reacting whenever I tried to go to school, breaking out in hives all over. Could she have figured it out? Nervously, I glanced at her. But instead of looking remorseful, Melissa was grinning. Sickness, huh? Stress-related, you say? Could it have been because of me? If so, you must have really hated me. How could she smile so smugly at a time like this? I felt anger slowly boiling inside me. Yes, you were the cause. I blurted it out without thinking, but she said nothing. Why? Why did you keep throwing so many nasty remarks my way back then? It was something I had always wanted to ask. Why had she been so mean to me? Even now, as an adult, the question had lingered in my mind. If you hated me, you could have just ignored me. So why did you do those things? Well, please, just tell me. If it's because you hated me, I can accept that now. Why bother? No matter what you find out, it's not like we're ever going to like each other anyway. Isn't it better not to overthink it? What? Forgetting we were in the middle of an interview, I leaned forward in frustration, but Melissa didn't seem to care. If anything, she looked completely disinterested as she stared at my resume. So, Keith, you graduated from Harvard, huh? Yeah, I did. Alright, let's get back to the interview. As she looked up, her cheerful smile returned, replacing her earlier indifference. It wasn't just a regular smile, though I recognized this one. This was the expression she always made when she had thought of something mischievous. Back in middle school, she'd approach me with the same look every now and then. This is something I get everyone to do. Since you say your academic background is true, you should have no problem solving this, right? She handed me a sheet of paper. It was a test sheet, full of English questions. What is this? It doesn't mean much. Let's just call it an extra entrance test. A different test from the one I took before the interview? Frozen in disbelief, I hadn't expected to be handed another test at this stage. Melissa, however, looked thoroughly amused. What's wrong? Can't figure it out? Her expression practically screamed, I bet you have no clue. She had clearly prepared this test on purpose. There's no way even a small city company would use a completely English test for hiring. Oh, by the way, I can solve problems like this with no trouble. She went on to boast that the test was as difficult as the University of Tokyo entrance exam. In fact, she claimed she had pulled the questions directly from their exam. Melissa looked genuinely amused as she watched me silently staring at the test paper. She was obviously enjoying the sight of me supposedly struggling. Then, standing up from her seat, she leaned in and whispered, "Well, for now, anyone who's not smarter than me won't get hired." She said this with a grin, clearly finding the whole thing entertaining. This was no job test. It was just her way of messing with me. "Oh, by the way, if you're not interested in getting hired, maybe I could grant you a little reward instead? As a special favor, I'll do one thing you ask." "That won't be necessary. I think I can meet your expectations." "This is easy." When I looked straight at her and spoke, Melissa had a surprised expression on her face and said, "Huh?" This time, I responded to her with a smile of my own. These questions were so simple I didn't even need to think. I quickly began writing my answers on the paper. Melissa, meanwhile, watched in disbelief, clearly not expecting me to breeze through it. "How? Like I said, Harvard is written on my resume. Are you telling me that's not a lie?" "No, seriously, which university did you actually attend?" "I didn't attend high school after graduating middle school. The stress back then had left me so drained I couldn't even muster the energy to go to school." "Harvard. Harvard University in the United States. It's right there on my resume." Thinking she still didn't believe me, I let out a sigh. But this wasn't the first time someone thought my resume was a lie during an interview at another company. In fact, even my first boss at my previous job thought the same. When I was 16, I started with a Japanese correspondence high school. Then I took the high school equivalency exam and was accepted into Harvard. Unlike Japan, the American system allows for skipping grades. I understood why it sounded unbelievable, but it was the truth. So, that proves I'm capable, doesn't it? Whether it's Tokyo University or Harvard level questions, I can solve them. Now, about that reward. Ignoring her trembling reaction, I exaggeratedly placed a hand on my chin, pretending to think. "What is it? You said you'd grant me one request, right?" In stark contrast to earlier, my serious expression made Melissa's smile fade away. She was clearly worried about what I might ask. But I had already decided from the start. Feeling a little sorry for her frustrated expression, I looked straight at Melissa and asked her directly. "All right, I get it. What do you want?" "All right, here's my question. Why did you always come after me in middle school? What did I ever do to you?" You've been dodging the question with vague answers all this time, so it's about time you gave me a clear explanation. But once again, Melissa refused to answer. Even though we were in the middle of an interview, I could feel my frustration growing. Her constant teasing and harassment, for no clear reason, had ultimately driven me to the point where I couldn't even attend high school. As memories of those times flooded back, I found myself glaring at her unconsciously. How long did the silence stretch on? Melissa eventually broke it, her voice carrying a hint of irritation, though her slightly downcast demeanor was evident. Her long hair obscured her face as she stared at the floor, leaving her expression unreadable. "This company has been managed by my mother, who worked tirelessly to maintain its performance, even through economic downturns." "That's right, your mother's name is listed as the chairperson." "Yes. You can't imagine how hard it was for her. She raised me while protecting her employees' livelihoods in a male-dominated world." "And do you know what my father was doing during that time?" "Well, I had always been curious about that." On the company's website and in its materials, only the names of Mrs. Nelson and Melissa were mentioned. Even back in middle school, it was always her mother who showed up to school events. I'd never seen her father. But everyone has their own family circumstances. There are many single-parent households, and I never thought it was my place to judge or pry. While I struggled to find the right words, Melissa continued speaking. "My father left when I was a child. He walked out on my mother and me." "I see. But one day, I found out. My father had become the father of another family. As soon as I said that, she stood up from her seat with a loud bang. Then, glaring at me, she spoke. Keith, do you understand? I'm talking about your father. What? My father? Your father is my biological father? Her words left me utterly bewildered, and she pressed on, her voice filled with emotion. I saw your family walking together before you started middle school. I can still picture it clearly. Hearing those unbelievable words, this time it was my turn to be shocked. Seeing my expression, she let out a scoffing laugh and continued. I wanted so badly to ask him why he abandoned us. But when I saw how happy he looked with you, I couldn't face him. I just went back home, feeling utterly miserable. Do you have any idea how it felt to see the smile that should have been meant for me directed at you instead? You stole the happiness that was supposed to be mine. As if I were her sworn enemy, she glared at me, clenching her teeth as she spoke. Her eyes were so sharp that I couldn't say a word in response. The father I knew didn't seem like someone who would irresponsibly abandon his children. And my mother had never mentioned anything like this. I stood there in silence, grappling with what she had said, while she continued, her voice shaking with anger. When we ended up in the same middle school, I hated seeing your face. Of course I said mean things to you. And now you're saying you got sick because of me? That's not fair. It all started with your father. After saying that, Melissa swept back her long hair and wiped away her tears. She had been holding them back all this time, but now they streamed down her face. If what she was saying was true, it would mean my father and Melissa's father were one and the same. Did my father really leave Melissa's family to be with my mother? I couldn't deny her words outright. After all, I wasn't biologically related to my father. When I was a child, my biological father had died in an accident. My mother had taken over the small diner he left behind, running it on her own. It was my current father who had stepped in to support her. At first, I was shy around him, but watching his unwavering devotion to my mother, I came to accept him as my dad. He's always been so kind. The silence that followed hung heavy between us, neither of us knowing what to say. Melissa was the first to break it. Why did you even come here? You knew I'd be here, didn't you? Coming to this interview means you want to work under me, right? Are you out of your mind? Her tears were gone now, but her eyes were still red as she stared at me with a blank expression. Do you actually want me to insult you again? Is that something you secretly enjoy? No, that's not it. Then why did you come here? With your qualifications, you could aim much higher, whether in Tokyo, America, or even Hokkaido. There are plenty of better companies out there. Actually, your mother helped save my family's diner. What? That makes no sense. It's true. My parents recently reopened the diner, and it's all thanks to your mother's help. I wanted to show my gratitude by contributing to her company. My parents had been debating for a long time whether to reopen the diner. During that time, my mother slipped on ice and was hospitalized. While we were at a loss, it was Melissa's mother who approached us with support. Honestly, I wasn't thrilled about the idea of working under someone who'd spent so much time insulting me. But I figured this was my chance to grow as a person. Grow? Don't make me laugh. You ran away from your problems. Yeah, I did run. But your mother chose to help us, regardless of the past. I don't know why she did it. But I want to accept that kindness without being shackled by old grudges. Holding on to hate and blaming you won't change anything. I'd forgotten this was supposed to be an interview as I stood up and passionately made my case. She must have believed me when I spoke honestly and assured her I wasn't lying. She looked visibly confused. And who could blame her? Learning that her mother had helped the family of someone she harbored so much resentment toward was hard to believe. What even is this? Why would my mother help the man who abandoned us? That doesn't make any sense. If you're going to lie, come up with something better. Then ask your mother. Melissa listened to my words but still seemed somewhat unconvinced. However, in this situation, even she would have to ask her mother if we were to make any progress. Fine. Just go already. With that, she motioned for me to leave. What was the point of the interview? It felt like the whole thing ended with nothing but a fight. One thing was clear, though, we were both left with unresolved feelings. After all, who's to say who was right? A few days later, back at my parents' house, I received a call from Melissa. She must have gotten my number from my resume. Honestly, I thought I'd failed the interview and had already started searching for other opportunities. I have something important to discuss. Come to the office again. I was surprised to hear directly from her instead of someone in HR, but I put on my suit and headed back to the city. When I arrived, the receptionist immediately directed me to the CEO's office. What on earth was I about to be told? If I had failed the interview, an email would have sufficed. Honestly, I was so nervous and restless that I couldn't calm down. A secretary escorted me to the door, and I knocked. "Come in," came her clear voice. When I entered, Melissa looked up from some documents. Her long hair was tied up, and her makeup was lighter than usual, giving her a more approachable appearance. As I stood there, slightly taken aback, she rose from her chair and walked over to me. Then, to my shock, she bowed deeply right in front of me. "What?" I stared at her in disbelief, but she remained bowed, silent. Not knowing what to do, I awkwardly asked her to raise her head. "What's going on?" "Sorry, but I don't understand." "I'm sorry. I'm really, truly sorry. Could you at least explain what you're apologizing for?" She slowly straightened up, her eyes glistening with unshed tears, and began to speak. "For all the things I said to you, and about your illness. I don't even know where to begin." "Alright, take your time. Just tell me everything step by step." While trying to calm her down as she looked on the verge of tears, I asked her to explain the situation. After that, Melissa apparently asked her mother for more details about her father. And also about me. My mother told me everything. I had misunderstood all this time. My parents' divorce was amicable. The real reason was my grandfather. He never liked my father and constantly mistreated him because he was a son-in-law. "Your grandfather?" "Yes, he was the one who drove my father out of the house." "I see." Actually, my father told me the same thing. After the initial confrontation, I had asked my parents about what had happened. I told them everything I had heard from Melissa, including her perspective. My father listened quietly and then bowed his head deeply before explaining. What I learned was the story of Melissa's grandfather. He had built a company from scratch in Sapporo, expanding it into a major enterprise during his time. He was renowned as a successful businessman. But his reputation wasn't all positive. He was also known as a cold-hearted man, like ice. While he was undeniably talented in business, he approached everything with ruthless pragmatism, valuing profit above all else. This attitude extended even to Melissa's mother. From a young age, she was subjected to strict training, denied a normal childhood, and even her friends were chosen for her. Despite her efforts to win her father's approval, she was never acknowledged and always felt deeply lonely. Eventually, she rebelled by introducing her fiancé to the family. That fiancé was my father. Of course, her father disapproved of him, always making snide remarks. Still, because my father was her only child's chosen partner, her father begrudgingly gave him control over a subsidiary company. But this tentative peace was shattered when Melissa was born. The moment her grandfather learned she was a girl, he flew into a rage. At the very least, a grandson should be born to carry on the family name. Then, she started harassing the company by forcing the senior executives, who had been entrusted by my father. to either return to headquarters or be dismissed. The employees working at the company each have their own lives to support. However, at this rate, there was a risk that all employees could end up losing their jobs. Even though I was just a hired CEO, I had been entrusted with the company and its employees. They decided to divorce to protect the company and its workers. Your father left you and your mother, fully prepared never to see you again, in order to protect both of you. It was also part of the agreement he made with my grandfather. If he had secretly tried to see you, there was a real risk that the entire subsidiary could have been completely shut down. I see. My mother must have kept it from me so I wouldn't blame myself, thinking they divorced because of me being born. That's likely. I imagine, in her position, I'd do the same. How could a parent tell their child something like that? Yeah. But because of my misunderstanding, I made your middle school years miserable. I'm so sorry. Tears welled in Melissa's eyes as she bowed deeply again. But this wasn't about assigning blame to anyone. My father apologized to me too. He said he kept it from me because he didn't want me to be dragged into it. I remembered the pained look on my father's face when he finally told me the truth. His expression then mirrored Melissa's now, and for the first time, I realized how alike they were. Why hadn't I noticed it before? After the divorce, my father happened upon my mother's small diner, which was struggling at the time. The warm atmosphere and her kindness touched him, filling the emptiness in his heart. He started visiting regularly, and they slowly fell in love. At the time, my mother was running the diner alone after my biological father had passed away in an accident. My mother worked tirelessly every day in a rundown shop while raising me as a child. Moved by her dedication and perseverance, my father gradually fell in love with her, and the two of them eventually became a couple. He always said that leaving Melissa, his daughter, behind was something he deeply regretted. But now, all he could do was wish for his daughter's happiness. That's why he was genuinely overjoyed when he saw Melissa featured on the company's website as the CEO of the business he once ran. However, after hearing this story, my father shared one of his lingering concerns with me. It was whether his daughter was being harassed by my grandfather. Now that your mother is the chairwoman of the company, has your grandfather caused any trouble? He was worried he might still be meddling. Melissa took a deep breath, wiped her tears, and smiled a light, unburdened expression. No, thanks to my mother's hard work, the company is stable. My grandfather, well, we're not completely out of contact. But he hasn't caused any problems. Everything's fine now. Her smile was calm and genuine, as if she had finally let go of the burden she'd been carrying. Keith, I worked so hard at Tokyo University to support my mother. Even though I became the CEO, I still rely on her advice. It just shows I still have a long way to go. But honestly, I'm fine now, so you don't need to worry. She said with a smile that seemed like it belonged to a completely different person from before. The intimidating Melissa I had known was gone, replaced by someone more genuine, perhaps her true self all along. With the burdens on both of us lifted, the conversation felt much lighter than before, almost like casual banter. So, Keith, you mentioned the diner reopened. How's it doing? Thanks to your mother, it's doing great. My mother told me she helped with the reopening. Ah, so you heard about that too. My parents' small diner had reopened in my mother's hometown, not in the city where they used to operate. Melissa's mother's support had been instrumental in making it possible. That was why I had been so eager to clear up the misunderstandings between us. Melissa's mother, after becoming the CEO and stabilizing the company, had finally managed to free herself from her father's oppressive influence. And after decades, she reached out to her ex-husband. Of course, it wasn't to rekindle their relationship but to apologize for what had happened back then. It was during that conversation that she learned her daughter and I had been classmates. When she visited my family's home, she bowed deeply to my mother and said, "Thank you for accepting him into your life." If he had been alone all this time, his heart might have broken. I'm truly grateful you became his partner. And I'm so sorry for what my daughter did to your son during middle school. My father had told Melissa that the divorce was entirely his fault so she wouldn't blame herself. But upon realizing how their choices had hurt their children, he deeply regretted not finding a better solution. But my father believed that if he went to see her now, it might only make things worse between Melissa and me. Thinking that way, and already determined to close his shop at the time, he decided to move to my mother's hometown. He thought that since their selfish actions had caused their daughter so much pain, putting distance between me and her would reduce the chances of any unpleasant feelings between us. It was apparently a decision the three of them made together. However, Melissa's mother wasn't satisfied, saying it wouldn't count as a proper apology. Because of that, the three of them continued to stay in contact. Eventually, her mother offered to help rebuild the shop by providing the necessary funds, as both an apology and a gesture of gratitude. Even so, my parents had no intention of returning to the city. Instead, they used the funds to reopen the diner in my mother's hometown. Some of our regular customers even come all the way out here. My dad is thrilled about it. That's why I'm so grateful to your mother. When I spoke, she still looked like she had more to say. What's wrong? I asked, and Melissa replied with her cheeks puffed out slightly. But with your skills, you could aim so much higher. You went to Harvard, why this company? I wanted to work here as a way of saying thank you. Sure, I had opportunities with top companies in Tokyo, but if I was going to work here, it had to be this company. And honestly, thank you. Everyone in my family is happy now. Really, why are you so kind? Don't tell me you've forgotten everything I did to you. Shouldn't you hate me? Your parents helped mine when we needed it most. Besides, am I hired? Of course you're hired. And really, I'm so sorry for everything. And thank you, she said, a single tear slipping down her cheek as she nodded. 1 year later, I successfully managed to get a job at Melissa's company. Now, I'm on the fast track to promotion and continue to achieve strong results in the sales department. Unlike the company in Tokyo, this one has many kind and supportive colleagues and senior staff, which makes it a very comfortable place to work. One day, as I was reviewing some documents in the conference room, there was a knock at the door, and Melissa peeked in. Good work, Ms. Nelson. Good work? You don't have to call me Ms. Nelson right now. But you are the president. Fine. Anyway, Keith, you've been such an asset to the company. As expected from a Harvard grad, she said, then quickly added, sorry. That came out so condescending, it's a bad habit of mine. You're the boss, it's fine. Hold your head high. Blushing slightly, she sat across from me. In the past year, I had noticed that beneath her polished exterior, she was often her own harshest critic. Thank you. I'll do my best. That's the spirit. Saying that, she fired herself up, and I patted her on the shoulder to cheer her on. Our relationship had been complicated, but now, we had opened our hearts to each other and could talk about anything. There would undoubtedly be many challenges ahead. But I was certain that, when the time came, we'd face them together by talking things through. Even though we weren't connected by blood, we were family. I wonder if, someday, we could become a real family. Lately, that thought had crossed my mind more often. But I hadn't shared it with her yet. I didn't feel like I was worthy of standing by her side just yet. But someday, hopefully in the near future, I wanted us to work hard together. With that in mind, I decided to put even more effort into my job. My name is Kyle. I work as the executive assistant to the president at Central Corporation. My personality, which keeps my emotions hidden, was highly valued and led me to my current position. One day, the president, Mr. Yates, called me and asked me to join an important meeting with a key client, International Tech Corporation. This company is a multinational organization, and the negotiators come from various nationalities. Mr. Yates speaks some English, but it's only at a conversational level. A translator was essential. On the day of the meeting, as we entered the conference room, the atmosphere was friendly, and small talk began. However, a casual joke from one of the representatives suddenly caused a misunderstanding, and the tension rose sharply. "What do you mean by that?" one person asked angrily, and another retorted, "It's just a joke. Don't take it so seriously." The mood quickly turned sour, and an emotional debate erupted. Fingers were pointed, and people started shouting at each other. Not only English but German, French, Spanish, and Italian were being spoken, turning the conference room into a battleground. Mr. Yates, visibly frustrated and confused, tried to calm everyone down in Japanese, saying, "Please, everyone, calm down," but it had no effect. Realizing that the deal could collapse and that this would result in a major loss for Central Corporation, I decided to take a bold step and raised my voice. "Hey!" I shouted, and everyone turned to look at me in surprise. The room fell silent, and the tension dissipated. I am Kyle, 26 years old. Currently, I work as the executive assistant to the president at Central Corporation. I may look like an ordinary guy, but I have a peculiar trait. It's that I don't show emotions on my face. Even when I'm angry or sad, I feel it inside, but it never shows on the outside. As a result, people often see me as a calm or cold person. But that's a big misunderstanding because, inside, I'm overflowing with emotions just like everyone else. It's just that they don't show on my face. Because of this, I've had many unpleasant experiences since I was a child. In kindergarten, tag was a popular game in our class. One day, I was it and was chasing after the other kids with all my energy. I was having so much fun, but apparently, my face didn't reflect that at all. A friend told me about it later. At the time, I was chasing a girl when she suddenly burst into tears, and somehow, I ended up getting scolded. The teacher ran over and said, "Kyle, don't scare the other kids. You shouldn't chase them with such a face." But I was just playing. I tried to explain. But the teacher didn't understand at all. In the end, I got scolded for just playing, and I felt so frustrated that I started crying. "No, you're wrong. I was just playing tag." In elementary school, our class pet goldfish passed away due to illness. Its name was Sparky, and it was everyone's favorite. Taking care of it was something I looked forward to every day, but one day, it suddenly stopped moving. The teacher and all my classmates cried as we said goodbye to Sparky. "Sparky, thank you. Goodbye." My friend said, wiping away tears, and it broke my heart. "Why don't we bury Sparky in the backyard?" the teacher suggested, and we all headed there. We dug a small hole with a shovel and gently buried Sparky. "Kyle, if you have something you'd like to say, please do," the teacher prompted me. I nodded silently and whispered, "Thank you, Sparky," but my expression didn't change at all. "Kyle, you're not crying at all, even though Sparky is gone," a classmate said in surprise. "Yeah, why are you so cold?" another added. "No, I'm sad too. I just can't cry," I thought to myself but couldn't say it out loud. Inside, I was crying just like everyone else, but on the outside, I appeared indifferent. Since then, I started being treated as I were heartless. Whenever others were chatting happily, they often grew quiet the moment I approached. I frequently overheard classmates whispering, "Kyle is so hard to read. He always seems so cold." Every day, I silently lamented, "Why doesn't anyone understand me?" Still, I couldn't change my expression, so all I could do was quietly wait for time to pass. During middle and high school, whenever we had events like sports days or school festivals, I was genuinely enjoying myself inside. But apparently, I always looked disinterested from the outside. "Kyle, you're making that cold face again." Such a buzzkill, a classmate would joke. I would silently protest in my mind, "That's not true. I'm having fun too," but I couldn't bring myself to say it aloud. During the sports day, I ran as hard as I could for my class, thinking I was giving it my all. But I could still feel the cold stares from my classmates. The same thing happened at the school festival. Even though I worked hard on preparing the play and exhibits, I often heard comments like, "Kyle, can't you look a little more excited?" I felt like I was enjoying it from the bottom of my heart, but that emotion never showed on my face. Why is it just me who gets seen this way? I often asked myself, over and over. Even the shock and frustration I felt didn't show on my face, so no one understood how I truly felt. I started to resent my inability to show emotions and grew frustrated with the unchangeable nature of myself. That was how I spent my childhood, and even after entering college, things didn't improve. As I interacted with more people, my inability to express emotions outwardly caused frequent difficulties in friendships and relationships. Despite that, I worked hard, focusing on learning languages and studying to better myself. When I graduated from college and got the job at my current company, I resolved to make a fresh start. Being an executive assistant was a new challenge for me, and I believed it was a chance to test my abilities. I even started thinking that my unemotional demeanor might be an asset in staying calm under pressure. Slowly, I began to feel more optimistic. One day, as I was organizing Mr. Yates's schedule as usual, my phone rang while I was reviewing detailed arrangements and messages. It was Mr. Yates. "Yes, this is Kyle. Kyle, can you come to my office? There's something I want to share with you." "Understood. I'll be there right away." After hanging up, I quickly tidied up my desk, grabbed my notebook and pen, and headed to his office. I knocked on the door and entered quietly. Mr. Yates was talking with a woman. "Well, I'll get back to work now," the woman said in a cheerful voice. "Sure. Think over what we discussed earlier," Mr. Yates replied warmly. The woman was Alice, the president's daughter, and she was my age. She worked in the accounting department to learn about the company's financial operations. When our eyes met, Alice gave a small smile and nodded politely. I returned the gesture with a quiet bow. Sitting deeply in his chair, Mr. Yates looked a bit tired as he spoke. "Sorry for calling you in so suddenly." Hearing that, I instinctively opened my notebook and prepared to take notes. "You're aware of the plan to acquire International Tech Corporation's business, right?" His voice carried a sense of determination. "Yes, I am." I nodded quietly. International Tech Corporation was one of Central Corporation's business partners, and as part of their organizational restructuring, Central Corporation had agreed to take over their business as the primary buyer. What I'm about to discuss is an update on that. Mr. Yates continued. His voice lowered slightly. It seems that International Tech Corporation has requested group negotiations. They likely have many concerns about changes to working conditions and employment rules. So they probably want to address everything thoroughly in advance. I replied to Mr. Yates's words. Group negotiations themselves are natural, but issues that arise during the process need to be addressed. That's right. Exactly. I want to prepare so the negotiations go as smoothly as possible. Mr. Yates continued, his expression growing slightly troubled. He let out a deep sigh and muttered, "Language barriers are really a struggle." International Tech Corporation is a foreign company with employees from various nationalities. Negotiating with their union would inevitably involve multinational representatives. They all speak English, but I'm worried about whether we can communicate effectively and alleviate their concerns, he said, furrowing his brow. You're right. With a multinational counterpart, cultural and language differences can lead to misunderstandings, I agreed. Language barriers can be a major obstacle in group negotiations. That's why we need to prepare carefully to ensure the negotiations go smoothly. Kyle, can you double-check the schedule? Mr. Yates asked. Understood, I replied, opening my notebook to review the schedule and mentally organizing the next steps. When Mr. Yates finished speaking inside, I left his office. As I stepped out, The hallway was still quiet, with barely anyone around. I walked ahead while reviewing the upcoming plans. As I moved forward, Mr. Yates's words lingered in my mind. Negotiating with a multinational group is no easy task. Even so, I reminded myself that my purpose here is to overcome such challenges. Walking down the hall, I began solidifying a plan in my mind. While reconfirming the schedule and organizing the necessary preparations, I thought about the best ways to lead this critical negotiation to success. On the day of the meeting with International Tech Corporation, I accompanied Mr. Yates to a rented conference room. When we entered, the union representatives from International Tech Corporation were already gathered. As expected, the group from International Tech Corporation was very multinational. Although Mr. Yates could speak some English, his conversational level meant smooth communication largely depended on me. Mr. Yates stepped forward and began his greeting. "Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. Today's meeting is a critical step in building mutual understanding and fostering a positive relationship." I translated his words into English for the International Tech Corporation representatives. The atmosphere in the room was a bit tense, but everyone nodded at Mr. Yates's words, and the mood eased slightly. After the introductions and small talk, the meeting began in earnest, with countless documents, laptops, and a projector at the ready. The discussion first addressed the concerns of International Tech Corporation employees working in the division slated for acquisition by Central Corporation. Mr. Yates turned to the representatives from International Tech Corporation and asked, "What concerns do you have?" I translated the question into English. One of the representatives spoke up, saying, "We're worried about significant changes to our working conditions." As we delved deeper, it became clear that they had an image of Japanese people working without breaks. They were worried that, with Central Corporation acquiring the business, they might be forced into such a working style. Many of them held the fixed notion that Japanese work culture is harsh. Hearing this, Mr. Yates maintained a calm expression and said, "At our company, we value our employees. I assure you that this will never happen. Let's thoroughly discuss these concerns and aim to create an even better working environment." I translated Mr. Yates's words into English. Then, with a slight smile, I added, "Only a few terrible managers enforce unfair work practices. Please don't worry." The representatives from International Tech Corporation seemed somewhat reassured by these words. As the meeting progressed, the representatives' expressions gradually softened with relief. Just as it seemed the discussions would proceed smoothly, an unexpected incident occurred. One of the International Tech Corporation representatives made a lighthearted joke, intending no harm. But it completely shifted the atmosphere in the room. The comment had no malice whatsoever, and it was merely a difference in values stemming from cultural differences. However, that one remark became a trigger, causing the other representatives' expressions to change and the tension in the room to escalate rapidly. One person, in a slightly irritated tone, asked, "What do you mean by that?" The original speaker, not wanting to back down, retorted, "It's just a joke. Don't take it so seriously." As these exchanges continued, the mood became increasingly strained. Sarcasm started flying back and forth, and the discussion gradually turned into an emotional confrontation. At first, the discussion was calm, but it gradually heated up, eventually escalating to the point where people stood up, pointing fingers at one another. "You're the one who said that," someone shouted, while another yelled, "Enough already." Shouts in English echoed throughout the room, soon accompanied by insults in various native languages. English, German, French, Spanish, and Italian merged into a chaotic mix of angry voices. Indeed, some of the remarks did contain malice. This only fueled the frustration further, escalating the situation into complete chaos. Yet, when I caught a glimpse of myself in the mirror on the conference room wall, my face was completely expressionless. Though I felt a deep sense of anxiety internally, my outward calmness almost seemed to ground me. The representatives from International Tech Corporation continued arguing fiercely in their native languages. The room felt like a battlefield, with English, German, French, Spanish, and Italian flying in every direction. Unable to understand their words, Mr. Yates looked visibly frustrated and confused. He tried to calm the room in Japanese, saying, "Everyone, please settle down." But it had no effect. "Everyone, calm down," he shouted, raising his voice, but his words were drowned out by the commotion. Whether they couldn't hear him or didn't understand him, the representatives continued their heated arguments. If this continued, the acquisition negotiations would collapse, leaving only the restructuring of International Tech Corporation's operations. If that were to happen, it would be a significant loss for Central Corporation. Both Mr. Yates and the company itself would undoubtedly face a major crisis. Mr. Yates's expression grew tense, reflecting his growing concern. Realizing the futility of the situation, I made a bold decision to raise my voice. "Hey!" I shouted loudly, surprising even myself. I may have never shouted this emotionally in my entire life. The moment I raised my voice, everyone fell silent, turning to look at me in astonishment. The room was suddenly quiet, and the atmosphere shifted dramatically. Feeling their eyes on me, I began speaking in English. "Everyone, please calm down. If we let our emotions take over like this, we won't be able to accomplish anything." Choosing my words carefully, I continued, addressing everyone. "We are all here with a shared goal. This discussion isn't just for us, it's for the people we represent." As my words resonated, I could sense the tension gradually easing. I then repeated the same message in each of their native languages. First, I spoke in German. Next, I addressed them in French, Italian, and finally, Spanish. With each language, I noticed their expressions changing little by little. Eventually, they began nodding in agreement, and the tension in the room started to dissipate. Then, I reported to Mr. Yates in Japanese. I told everyone to calm down. He nodded with satisfaction and said, "Thank you, Kyle." Altogether, I conveyed the message in 6 languages, including English and Japanese, capturing the nuances to ensure everyone understood. Those who had been arguing sat back down, apologizing quietly as they did. Still, a slight awkwardness lingered in the air. Although most of them had regained their composure, traces of emotional tension remained. Mr. Yates scanned the room and spoke. "It seems we're no longer in the right mood to hold calm and productive discussions today." I added, "Yes, everyone likely needs time to cool their heads." Mr. Yates addressed the group with a suggestion. "Let's reschedule and meet again on another day with the same purpose in mind." Everyone agreed to this proposal, and the meeting was adjourned. Relieved that the situation had been resolved without further escalation, I left the venue. On the way back in the car, I sat at the wheel, feeling the tension gradually lift. In the back seat, Mr. Yates gazed out the window, then spoke suddenly. "I must say, I was truly surprised today. I knew you were strong in English, but I didn't expect you to be fluent in German and French too. You're a true polyglot." Keeping my eyes on the road ahead, I responded calmly. "It's an honor to receive your praise, Mr. Yates." Mr. Yates chuckled and said, "Your language skills are remarkable, but you studied in Japan, didn't you? Did you go on a short-term study abroad program?" For a moment, memories from my past came to mind as I replied. "Yes, I've had some short-term study abroad experiences. However, that's not all. I've had various opportunities to learn." Looking intrigued, Mr. Yates continued, "I see. I'm truly impressed by your language skills, calm judgment, and how you handle today's situation. Do you have any special methods for studying languages?" I smiled slightly before answering. "Well," I began recounting my story, reflecting on my childhood. When I was in the early years of elementary school, I often played alone, unable to make many friends. I spent my days reading books in the corner of the classroom or catching insects at the edge of the schoolyard. One thing that fascinated me, however, was watching English language educational programs on TV. Every evening, I would sit in front of the TV in the living room, staring intently at the screen and muttering English phrases under my breath. Noticing this, my mother said, "Maybe Kyle has an interest in languages. Kyle, would you like to try attending an English conversation class?" My mother suggested this to me. I accepted her offer and started attending a children's English conversation school. Though I was nervous at first, I gradually became captivated by the fun of learning English. After class, I would return home to read English textbooks and novels. Each time I encountered new words or expressions in the books, I felt an excitement that was hard to describe. By the time I entered middle school, I had developed an interest in other languages beyond English. One day, while watching a movie, I heard dialogue in German and Italian. I was mesmerized by how beautiful they sounded and immediately began learning those languages. "Kyle, do you enjoy studying so many languages?" My mother once asked me curiously. "It's so much fun," I replied. That simple answer summed up everything I felt. Around the time I finished high school entrance exams, I was playing a horror video game and realized the enemies were speaking Spanish. In that moment, my curiosity about Spanish was piqued, and I began learning it as well. "Kyle, you really like taking on so many challenges." My father once said this, impressed. For me, learning languages was an adventure, a key to opening doors to new worlds. This passion for languages continued throughout my school years. When I entered college and had more free time, I used the money I earned from part-time jobs to travel to countries where the languages I had learned were spoken. "Kyle, are you going on another trip?" "Where to this time?" a friend asked me eagerly. "Yes, I'm planning to visit Germany this time." "I'm really interested in their culture and history," I replied. When I arrived in Germany, I found myself even more drawn to the language as I experienced the local streets and lifestyle. Interacting with the locals allowed me to discover the joy of learning living languages. One day, while chatting with a German friend at a cafe, he asked, "Your German is quite good. How long have you been studying?" "Just a few years, but speaking it here is incredibly fun," I responded. After that, I visited countries where the languages I had learned were spoken, such as Italy, Spain, and France. Experiencing the local cultures and traditions only deepened my desire to continue learning. "Kyle, I heard you're learning French now too. You really can speak so many languages," a friend once remarked in admiration. "Yes, I even went on a short-term study program to France. It helped me improve a lot," I replied. My time in France was a tremendous experience. I attended college classes, conversed with French friends, and learned new expressions and phrases. Living with a host family, I used French daily in practical situations, which sharpened my skills even further. "Kyle, your French pronunciation is becoming quite natural," my host mother once complimented me. "Thank you. I've learned so much." "Thanks to all of you," I said, expressing my gratitude. With each journey and learning experience, I steadily improved. By my senior year of college, I had become proficient in Japanese, English, German, Italian, Spanish, and French, 6 languages in total. "Kyle, you're truly amazing. I can't believe you can speak so many languages," a friend once said. "Thank you. But there's still so much more to learn," I replied. I had already decided to keep learning new languages moving forward. Though I had gained valuable skills, the job hunting process was far more challenging than I had anticipated. I thought my ability to remain calm and collected during interviews would be an advantage, but it often backfired. "Kyle, your credentials are impressive, but could you show a bit more enthusiasm?" one interviewer once told me. "I am passionate about this, but it doesn't always show outwardly," I explained, though my words didn't seem to change the interviewer's expression. Being calm is a good thing, but others likely perceive it as coldness or a lack of sincerity. From my past experiences, I understood this all too well. Teamwork and collaborating within an organization had always felt like a weak point for me. Maybe I'm better suited for working behind the scenes, I reflected. That's when the idea of becoming a secretary occurred to me. I thought supporting someone and working in the background might align with my personality. Being an executive assistant, it might not be a bad idea, I thought, and began looking through executive assistant job postings. When I came across the listing for an executive assistant position at Central Corporation, I felt a sense of destiny. My calm demeanor and language skills were recognized, and I successfully secured the position, becoming Mr. Yates's executive assistant. Even after starting my job, I continued studying languages. Learning new languages brought me immense joy. During our ride back to the office, Mr. Yates laughed heartily after hearing about my struggles during my school years. "You're such an interesting person, Kyle. I like you even more now." While I felt a little embarrassed inside, my expression remained the same as always, calm and composed. Mr. Yates seemed captivated by the story and continued his praise. "It's truly incredible that you've managed to master so many languages on your own. Plus, your composure is a tremendous asset. I'm so glad you're my executive assistant." Hearing his words, I smiled inwardly. "Thank you. But I still have much to learn." Mr. Yates nodded with satisfaction and continued. "Kyle, having someone like you is invaluable to the company. You've been such a great help to us." Grateful for his words, I kept driving without letting my emotions show outwardly. "I'm just doing my best to contribute in any way I can. If that helps the company, then I'm happy." Mr. Yates nodded again, clearly pleased, and added, "I have high expectations for you, Kyle. I'm counting on you moving forward." Feeling slightly embarrassed inside but maintaining my usual calm expression, I replied, "Of course. I'll do my best to support you." Even after that, Mr. Yates continued praising me all the way to the office. Each time, I silently expressed my gratitude while calmly continuing to drive. By the time we arrived, I felt a newfound confidence and a deep sense of gratitude toward Mr. Yates. The next day, my inbox was flooded with emails from the participants of the previous meeting, apologizing for their behavior. Each email expressed regret for the emotional outbursts and a request to reschedule the meeting. "I'm truly sorry for what happened yesterday. I let my emotions get the better of me and disrupted the discussion. Could we please have another opportunity to meet?" Many of the emails also included comments about how my words had resonated with them. Kyle's words, "This discussion isn't just for us here," really struck a chord with me. I've realized I wasn't acting with the responsibility of a union representative in mind, and I deeply regret that. A new date was set, and the same participants gathered once again with a renewed purpose. This time, the atmosphere was calm and composed, reflecting the lessons learned from the previous session. We're determined to make up for our previous mistakes. Thank you for giving us another chance. The discussion progressed constructively, focusing on revising regulations and addressing concerns about the acquisition. The representatives proposed ideas and asked questions one after another, and Mr. Yates responded to each one with care. At Central Corporation, we prioritize our employees. No matter where they're from, we aim to provide an equally comfortable working environment. We will continue to review and improve as needed and value your input in this process. The meeting went smoothly, and a solid foundation for the new framework was established. Though there would still be adjustments and additions to make, the immediate goal was achieved. This moment marked not only a step forward for the negotiation but also the point where my calm demeanor and multilingual abilities earned the trust of everyone present. Today's discussion was incredibly productive. Kyle, it wouldn't have gone this smoothly without your support. Thank you so much. I responded to Mr. Yates's words with a quiet smile. Thank you as well. It was all thanks to everyone's efforts. I look forward to continuing to work together. With that, we took a significant step forward. Thanks to their cooperation, the company was steadily advancing. Sometime later, the business Central Corporation had acquired began to stabilize. The employees in that division were primarily from overseas, and as time passed, the differences in their cultures and values became more apparent. There are some aspects of Japanese work culture that don't quite align with us. One employee remarked. What specific issues are you facing? I asked. For example, how we take vacations and approach tasks. Things are more flexible back home, they explained. Though the complaints weren't numerous, they weren't entirely absent either. Whenever such concerns arose, Mr. Yates would listen earnestly. Please don't hesitate to share anything that will help improve your work environment. We're committed to being as flexible as possible. Following this policy, I engaged in direct dialogue with the workers. My communication skills proved invaluable as a bridge between different cultures. Kyle, thank you for always listening. Thanks to you, things feel like they're gradually improving. Such messages of gratitude became more frequent. As we worked on ongoing improvements, the efforts of Mr. Yates and I were yielding tangible results. The collaboration between people with different cultures and values continued to create a better workplace. One day, Mr. Yates called me to his office. When I knocked and entered, he was grinning as usual. Kyle, it's good to see you. If you hadn't stopped everyone's quarrel back then, who knows what would have happened? Don't you agree? He began. Thank you. I'm glad I could be of some help at that moment, I replied. Mr. Yates, still grinning, continued. You have excellent language skills, and you handle your duties as an executive assistant efficiently. I rely on you a great deal. Feeling slightly puzzled, I continued listening. To be honest, I think it's a waste to keep you just by my side. How about this? Our company has many departments. So why don't you rotate through them over a few years? Rotating through departments? That's an interesting suggestion. May I ask why? I inquired. Mr. Yates laughed heartily and replied, It's for learning. There's something I'd like you to do in the future. After a brief pause, I replied, Understood. If it helps me improve my skills, I'd be happy to take on the challenge. Wonderful. That makes me happy, he said enthusiastically. Then, with a grin, he added, One more thing, how about a matchmaking meeting? I was so stunned I couldn't form a reply. Excuse me? Mr. Yates continued. Well, there's someone inexperienced in matters of love. Her name is Alice. I was inwardly stunned beyond belief. Alice was Mr. Yates's daughter and the heiress of the company. Is he trying to groom me to become the next president? I thought, feeling a wave of panic. Noticing my reaction, Mr. Yates laughed. It seems you figured it out, he said. Hearing those words, I grew even more flustered. On the morning of the matchmaking meeting, I stood in front of the mirror adjusting my tie. I hadn't slept well the night before due to nerves, and my eyes looked puffy. Adjusting my tie, I let out a deep sigh. I've never been in a relationship before, and now I'm suddenly having a matchmaking meeting with the president's daughter. I muttered to myself. Glancing back at the mirror, I noticed my face was distorted with nerves and flushed with embarrassment. Seeing that, I couldn't help but smile. Well, look at that, I can pull myself together when I need to. Muttering those words, I faced the mirror once again. To meet Mr. Yates's expectations, I resolved to shake off my inner doubts and face forward with a smile. Not succumbing to anxiety or fear, but trusting in my own abilities and moving forward. This was my new challenge. Taking a deep breath, I calmed my mind. Life presents us with various trials and encounters, each one a stepping stone for growth. I felt that this trial, too, was an important opportunity to take a step forward. All right, let's go, I resolved silently, stepping away from the mirror. Believing I could overcome any obstacle, I took my first step toward a new journey. I didn't know what the future held. But I vowed to trust in my convictions and efforts, to keep looking ahead, and to keep moving forward. And so, a new story began. In my heart, I thought, it's the courage and actions of individuals that nurture connections between people and carve out a brighter future.